to this week's playoff edition of High School Roundup on CUTV. I'm your host, Anthony D'Agostino, and alongside me, as always, is Stephen Ruffing and Danny Beck. Switching things up because we have some different highlights this week than we have in the past. Steve went to a single-A school, and we always start with single-A first, so that's why you're seeing Steve on that side of your screen. Also want to mention we are live on CUTV as well, so thank you all for watching on your television sets. But we're going to jump right into it. We have a lot of things to cover in this show. So, Steve, we had California in the playoffs for the first time in a very long time, and especially at home in that stadium at California, and you had the highlights for this.
Absolutely, and before I jump right into that, usually I'm doing Laurel Highlands highlights, and Jerry DePay, our guy that does the South Union stuff, he's in the hospital. He's dealing with some appendicitis. He had surgery. Everything is going well, so we just want to wish best wishes to you, Jerry, and for a speedy recovery. So we're going to jump into California. They hosted Bishop Canevin. This was their first playoff game at California in quite some time. And boy, did California, they did not disappoint. Jelani Stafford gets right at it with a 15-yard run right off the back, putting California up 7-0. Stafford is right back at it with a powerful 5-yard run to give California that 14-0 lead. And here we go. Colin Phillips, something you don't see out of this California team, a 45-yard pass to Coach East Ryan. We're used to him on the ground. We're going to go into the second quarter now. This is a fumble recovery. The big man, Braden Collins, picks up that fumble. That is actually going to set up California for a field goal. California, right after that field goal, Jelani Stafford right on the ground again. He goes towards the trouble. Look at him, blowing that shoulder, just telling people to get out of his way. And then the final touchdown with like 30 seconds left in the half. This came off an interception. Colin Phillips, he goes on the ground himself with a 35-yard run. What a performance. The final score was going to be 51-7. As you see on your screen, they're going to face Union at Cannon Mac next week. Jelani Stafford, he picked up 140 yards that game. But Bishop Canevin, Zach Trusky, he had the only touchdown for that game. He rushed for 123 yards, and he now has 1,023 yards on this season, finish off that season. So nice performance from him out of that pretty tough loss to California.
And crazy uniforms. I looked over at Anthony and was like, oh my God, they look sharp. I guess it's look good, play good.
I guess so.
A tough win. And Jelani Stafford, big body. I know we always talk about that. But it's really men versus boys out there on the field. He's just bowling over people really at will. You mentioned it, kind of get out of his way, and that's really
exactly.
what it is.
And he goes towards the trouble when he's running towards you. He will go towards you. He'll lower that shoulder, so just stay out of this guy's way.
And you look, when we did the game at California with the TV truck, you look smaller on TV since we're so high up.
Yep.
But with you on the ground doing the field highlights, he is huge. He almost looks like a fullback, and he's the tailback. He's just running over people.
I mean, just absolute.
That too.
Just
a beast.
A beast. That's all it is.
As I said before, we have a lot to cover, so we're going to get right into the scoreboards from the single-A playoffs from last week. You see Fort Cherry, they lost to Union 30-21. And then Amani Christian, they defeated Stowe Rocks in shutout fashion 52-0. Continuing on here in the 1A playoffs, Olsh defeating Springdale 56-26. And then Clairton defeating Summit Academy 41-18. Something to note in that game, there was a scrum and fisticuffs that broke out in that game. And Whitfield has not decided whether or not they're going to suspend players from Clairton and Summit Academy as of yet. So make sure you stay tuned for that, because that has an impact on Clairton's next game. As we continue on in the scoreboards here, Carmichael's taking on Western Beaver. Carmichael's won. That is not the correct score. Carmichael's won 28-8. I actually added the 2 there in Western Beaver. 28-8 was the final score for Carmichael's Western Beaver. Jeanette shutting out Monessen 49-0. Continuing on in the single-A playoffs, Rochester defeating West Green 39-14. As you now see the brackets and who these teams will play. You see on the left side, California and Union, Amani Christian at Olsh, and guys, that California Union game is going to be at Cannon Mac. These are all now not playing at the higher seed. They're going to be at a neutral site. But Union defeating Fort Cherry, kind of surprising. So now California has to take on a non-conference rival.
Yeah, and I think what I was going to talk about really was we didn't really see any surprises other than that Fort Cherry and Union game. I mean, last week we were really talking about maybe we're going to see another matchup where California is going to have to go against Fort Cherry. But yeah, a little bit of a shakeup. Nonetheless, now they're going to have to face an out-of-conference opponent.
On the other side of the bracket, Clairton will have to take on Carmichael as that game is at Charleroi. So Charleroi having a playoff game, they ended up falling. We'll get to that later. They will be hosting that contest between Clairton and Carmichael. And then Jeanette will take on Rochester. But guys, talking about that Clairton game against Carmichael's, if those players get suspended, Steve, that could be a possible victory for Carmichael's.
Yeah, because Clairton right now, they have very limited players to begin with. That's been the story of Clairton for quite some time. There has always been rumors of them closing down the school just because the limited number of kids that they have attending. So if they have these suspended, that could really be some trouble. But I know in the past, I've seen coaches take suspensions instead of the players, instead of trying to figure out and hand out a bunch of suspensions to players. I've seen the head coach take the suspension. I don't know. That happened to my soccer team. I don't know if the same rules can apply to football, but we'll have to see. But that could be some serious trouble for Clairton.
Looking now at the AA side of things, Charleroi took on Charlotte took on Avonworth, excuse me, and I was actually at the game doing the highlights for that one. But Danny, you're the one who's going to be doing the highlights on High School Roundup.
I do have the highlights, and yeah, I was in Bloomsburg, Pennsylvania, but nonetheless, we're going to cover it now. So yeah, we're going to jump right into the highlights, get started right away. And here's Charleroi at home. You mentioned, Anthony, haven't got many home games for a playoff, and right off the bat, Gino Pellegrini is going to dance around in the pocket for quite some time, kind of Russell Wilson-esque, if you will. And then he's going to find Hunter Perry for a 22-yard touchdown pass. And right here, we're going to see the extra point. It was actually blocked as it dribbles into the back of the end zone. But nonetheless, Charleroi getting on the board. And then Charleroi here on defense, an interception here by Legend Davis, making his name really come to fruition, intercepting the ball in the playoffs. It's pretty big for your team. And then Charleroi trying to answer back on offense cannot. It looks like it fell right into the intended receiver on that one. Obviously, it was for Avonworth, not for Charleroi. Wrong choice there, I guess you could say, Gino Pellegrini. And then in the fourth quarter now, Charleroi and Gino Pellegrini back on offense. Great pass over there, 13-yard pass to Cameron Carter is going to set up this touchdown run here from Gino Pellegrini. And then the two-point conversion, trying to get back into this contest. As you see, Gino Pellegrini yet again dancing around the pocket. This time it's going to fall incomplete. And then Avonworth on offense, and Charleroi gets down on the ball. And that's big for Charleroi now because they're just trying to get back into this contest as much as possible. And then right here, Gino Pellegrini on a tough pass right here. It's going to fall incomplete. And Avonworth is going to take down Charleroi at home 21-12. And I wasn't at that contest, Anthony, as you mentioned earlier before, but we covered Charleroi quite a bit this entire season, and Gino Pellegrini was really the driving force on this team. And the offense, too, Hunter Perry mentioned quite a few times in those highlights, but Gino Pellegrini, the driving force, could not get his team the victory.
Unfortunately for that game, I was at the game, and I heard from the one Charleroi videographer that was there. That was the highlights from the second half. I was at the EF Beaver game, which we'll get to later, for the first half, and then the second half for the Charleroi Avonworth game. But the first half, Gino Pellegrini threw 3 interceptions, and that's not like him.
No.
And that was his last interception you saw there on the highlights. That was his 4th one. There were 6 turnovers for Charleroi. One of them was returned for a touchdown. I mean, I think part of it was the playoff nerves, that
Right.
they weren't ready for it.
Right.
And that's definitely a possibility that they just couldn't handle it. In the first half, one of Charleroi players who kind of tweaked an injury left, just walked off the field. And that's just a morale booster for your entire
Right.
team. Yeah. And once that happens, it's hard to get back.
Right. I mean, no matter what player you are, you have to set an example for your team. But this is not the Gino Pellegrini that we saw, the Gino Pellegrini that we know. So there had to have been some jitters going on. Avonworth's defense, that's a heck of a defense you're trying to get past. So all props to Avonworth as they move along the bracket.
Pellegrini had some good plays there, but they just couldn't convert into points.
Right.
There were some good plays where the defense was pressuring him. He had nowhere to go, and he found an open receiver, and he was able to make the play. That just didn't turn into points. But he's got a chance to continue his athleticism, as I believe he's only a junior, so he'll be back next year as well with Charleroi. As you take a look now at the 2A scores here, Steel Valley taking on Laurel 42-13, the victors for Steel Valley. Neshannock taking on Burgettstown, and Neshannock winning 31-28. Continuing on in the AA playoffs, Riverside shutting out Fraser 34-0, and then Washington defeating Freedom 42-9. Continuing on in AA playoffs, East Allegheny defeating Mohawk 28-14, and then Cardinal World North Catholic defeating Brentwood 35-7. Sierra Catholic just barely beating Beth Center 27-20. And as we continue on to the brackets now, you see Steel Valley defeating Laurel. They move on. Burgettstown there will take on Steel Valley, and then Riverside takes on Avonworth. Guys, that Riverside-Avonworth game I think is going to be a tricky one for Avonworth and Riverside. They're going to be a tough opponents for each other.
Right. I mean, if Avonworth's defense can do what they did against Charleroi, I think they have a really good chance against this Riverside team. But I want to note something about Steel Valley real quick. They're on their 23rd, 24th straight win since last season going through the playoffs, and I just want to note that. Just a little,
brag.
Yeah, a little brag.
Little
Just
brag.
no big deal brag. I just want to say that, so they're still on a roll. But Avonworth, if they can keep up that defense, they have a really good shot.
On the other side of the bracket, Washington will take on East Allegheny at Elizabeth Forward, and Cardinal World North Catholic takes on Sierra Catholic at Hampton. Guys, that Sierra Catholic Best Center game, Best Center was right in that game. They just fell by 7 points.
Yeah, and I think that was the biggest surprise. Although Sarah Catholic, we pretty much picked them to beat Beth Center as they just got into the playoffs the last minute. One of the last teams that were really added in. But yeah, it just seems like there's no really surprises this year. I mean, the closeness of the games, I guess you could say, if you really want to describe it as that. But yeah, it's just really setting up the matchups later on in the bracket.
Right, and you know, the story of Whitfield football is in the regular season, anything can happen. But once you get to the playoffs, you have some experienced teams that do not lose in the playoffs.
Yeah.
So when we get going in the later rounds of playoffs, it's going to be very, very predictable to see who's going to move forward.
Moving on now to the AAA side of things, we have some highlights from this one. As I mentioned, I went to the Elizabeth Forward Beaver game for the first half, and that was the first time in a very long time Elizabeth Forward had a home playoff game as well, and their crowd did not disappoint. As you hear the student section here screaming about the Elizabeth Forward team. As Beaver trying to come out there, jogging onto the field, trying to be the upset over this Elizabeth Forward team, and then Elizabeth Forward just sprinting through the banner there with their first home playoff game. And then Brody List, the QB here, throwing it deep into the end zone. This one's tipped and caught by Zach Hansen for a 32-yard pass. That kick was good. And then Zach Benedek finds his receiver open. That's a 31-yard touchdown pass to Gavin Mardick. That kick was also good, so it's 7-7. And then Beaver, Brennan List gets into the end zone. It did not look like he crossed the plane to me, but the referee said he did, and that's a touchdown for him. And then Jake Light Leader gets a 15-yard run right here, just going across the field and then finally getting pushed out of bounds. And then Beaver here looking for the end zone. List will go into the end zone and it's going to be incomplete. He had a receiver wide open. List again on offense. This time he will find pay dirt as his receiver Tyler Wallace gets into the end zone for a 16-yard pass. Elizabeth Forward though blocks this punt in the end zone and it's caught for a touchdown for the Warriors of Elizabeth Forward. However, their extra point is blocked too. So a blocked punt for a touchdown and a blocked extra point though. And then Elizabeth Forward trying to answer back here again. This time their pass gets intercepted and Beaver would score a touchdown on that drive. Beaver upsets Elizabeth Forward 40-20, and Beaver's next game will be against Aliquippa at Central Valley.
It looked like there was a lot of defensive pressure. I mean, I know that I wasn't at the game, obviously, but it just seemed like back and forth, a lot of defense. It seemed like every time Elizabeth Forward dropped back in the pocket, Beaver was right there. and they were hitting them, and I mean that's what really got the victory.
Yeah, it's tough to see a local team like Elizabeth Forward go down like that, but Beaver, boy, they came out with everything, and they had an answer for everything that Elizabeth Forward threw at them. So, again, good to see them move along in the bracket. It's a shame that Elizabeth Forward got knocked out so early.
Yeah.
Steve, I think that is exactly what you're talking about, where teams that have been in the playoffs tend to stay in the playoffs. As Elizabeth Forward, like the first time in a long time that they were in the playoffs, Beaver showing that they've been there before. As you take a look now at the AAA scoreboards here, Aliquippa defeating South Park 42-12, and our friends from Derry, Quaker Valley, defeating Derry 51-29. Moving on into the other side, Seton LaSalle defeating Freeport 35-18. Now looking at the AAA brackets now, Aliquippa will take on Beaver, and Quaker Valley will take on Seton LaSalle. That game will be at North Hills. Guys, which game would you like to watch in this one?
Definitely Aliquippa
Yeah.
Beaver. I don't know. We were both saying it at the same
he
time.
took the words right out of my mouth. I mean, Aliquippa has been running the Whippeal for quite some time now, and Beaver, I mean, another solid team. Just the fact that those two teams are facing off each other in the second round is something special.
It's a treat.
Yep.
It definitely is a treat.
Well, before we go to break, back with the West Virginia High School Roundup, Dylan Godet has your West Virginia Roundup report.
Thanks, Anthony. And as you've known all season, the West Virginia High School football is a week behind there in terms of PA football. So this is the first week coming up this Friday is the first week of West Virginia High School football, high school football playoffs. So let's get right to the playoff brackets. First, we're going to start out with AAA, and Huntington takes home the #1 seed. They will be playing host to their arch rival there in South Charleston. Pretty cool to see arch rivals facing off in the first round. These are, again, done by computer rankings 1 through 16. So it's based off points on who you play against this season. Another interesting matchup should be Hedgesville and Hurricane. They're 8 versus 9. Both of those teams are accustomed to playing in the playoffs, so should be a very interesting matchup. Let's take a look at the right side of the AAA bracket. It is Martinsburg hosting Morgantown there. Interesting game as well. Martinsburg, by far the best team in terms of talent and which points being put on the board this season, averaging over 50 points a game, have defeated every opponent in West Virginia by more than 40 points. So keep a lookout for Martinsburg there. This is really their tournament, their playoffs to lose here. Another interesting matchup would be Capital against Wheeling Park. Both of those teams, are known for their football in the playoffs as well. And now on into AA side of things here. Mingo Central plays host to Robert C. Byrd. Mingo Central won the AA championship last season. Look for them to try to rebound this and take it home again this year. Again, #4 right there, Fairmont Senior, the Fighting League Rapchecks playing host to Kaiser. On into the right side of the AA playoffs is #2 Bluefield hosting Braxton County there in a matchup down in the southern West Virginia. And Bridgeport, who fell, the #3 seed there in Bridgeport, fell last season to Fairmont Senior in the semifinals. They were 4-time defending AA state champions, so look for them to rebound this season. And now on into Single A. East Hardy is the #1 seed. Big surprise there. St. Mary's has run Single A for a number of years. East Hardy knocking off South Harrison 2 weeks ago, and they get the #1 seed. St. Mary's, just mentioned them there, they're #5 seed, playing host to Doddridge County. On to the right side of the Single A bracket, just mentioned South Harrison as well. They'll be playing host to Richwood. One of their star running backs, though, for South Harrison is gone for the season due to a leg injury, so look for South Harrison to try to build off that, maybe get some momentum there as well. And a big surprise in terms of seeding is #3 Midland Trail. Came out of nowhere this season, got a lot of big wins, and they will be the #3 seed in Single A. So that's all for West Virginia High School football. Stay up to date with the playoffs, as this should be a very interesting playoffs to see who comes home with the championships in each of those respective divisions. Coming up next after the break, we have 4A scores and brackets, 5A scores and brackets, as well as your 6A brackets as well. So stay tuned.
Save preset 1 for Cal U's best music. More music in the car, more music in the door, more music everywhere. This is 91.9 WCAL Power 92. The home of the Vulcan Nation. station, playing Cal U's best music. 91.9 WCAL. WCAL. Power 92.
Hello, welcome back to High School Roundup live on CUTV. As we look now at the Quad A side of things here in the WPIAL playoffs. As you see here, South Fayette shutting out West Mifflin 35-0. Montour defeating Newcastle in a very close game, 35-31. On the other side of that bracket, Bell Vernon defeating Mars 42-7, and then Thomas Jefferson defeating Trinity 42-0. As guys, we're taking a look at the Quad A brackets now. South Fayette taking on Montour. West Mifflin kind of an upset this season. They kind of fell down, but Bell Vernon and Thomas Jefferson, the matchup we thought we'd see, is here in the prime time.
Yeah, no, it's going to be a fantastic matchup. And Steve mentioned last week that South Fayette taking on West Mifflin, there's the powerhouse that South Fayette is. He really warned us of that. I thought West Mifflin was always going to be a tough competitor, but this season it kind of seemed like they were falling off. And so really Steve kind of predicted that matchup with West Mifflin coming on the wrong side of that, the score. But yeah, Bell Vernon and TJ, what a treat.
Yeah, I know. I grew up never bet against South Fayette or Thomas Jefferson, and Bell Vernon are going to struggle in that second round, I think. Coming on, even though they beat them earlier in the season, Thomas Jefferson is mad, they're angry, and they're playoff veterans.
We will definitely see what happens in that matchup. It's going to be very close as we take a look at the 5A brackets. Now, Penn Trafford just squeaking out a victory over Fox Chapel 28-21. Upper St. Clair and Franklin Regional, it was a very low-scoring game.
Doozy.
Oof.
Doozy.
6-3 victors, Upper St. Clair over Franklin Regional. As we look at the other side of the brackets now, Gateway defeating Woodland Hills 40-28, and then West Allegheny would actually lose to McKeesport. I apologize. They lost 22-21. I flipped the scores. McKeesport beat West Allegheny there, and we're going to take a look at the brackets now, guys. 5A is just crazy. Penn Trafford wins not by much. They have a gut check win against Fox Chapel. You saw Upper St. Clair defeating a powerhouse team of Franklin Regional, and then McKeesport pulling a McKeesport and beating West Allegheny. Guys, try to make sense of this bracket.
I can't.
You
can't.
McKeesport just doing the absolute unthinkable. West Allegheny is a WPIAL powerhouse at 5A. I mean, really, they should be in 6A. I mean, they're huge. So McKeesport getting that win is unbelievable. Penn Trafford barely getting away with that Fox Chapel win. I mean, this bracket's just bananas.
And McKeesport, we got a little bit of insight from the Buccaneer, Dylan Godet. It was really the triple option that helped McKeesport take down West Allegheny. And also, Woody High, I bet on you, and you lost.
Yeah, they were down this year.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, they were definitely down, but I don't know. I just thought you were talking about Woody High and the teams that normally are good in the playoffs. They do well.
They're also on a new coach.
Yes, that's very true.
Losing Coach Novak.
Yeah.
Coach Novak retiring after last season.
That was a big story over
Yeah, it
the
was.
entire
It was huge.
WPIAL.
I mean,
it was all over the radio and everything.
They renamed the Wolverina to Novak Stadium.
Wow, that's big stuff.
It's pretty cool. I mean, the guy's a legend there.
We're going to look now at the 6A bracket. Not as much craziness over there. Pine Richland, the number 20 team in the country, defeating Norwin there. And that was a score of 49-14. North Allegheny upsetting Mount Lebanon. Not sure if it was it's technically an upset, but not sure if it was really an upset. That was a 38-14 win for North Allegheny. Then Pittsburgh Central Catholic just defeating Peters Township by 7, 27-20. Bethel Park falling to Penn Hills by 2, 30-28. Guys, is Pine Richland your favorite to win this bracket?
Yeah, absolutely.
I'd have to say, yeah. But that against North Allegheny, that's a big one.
It's going to be a tough one.
That's a big one.
Well, that is going to do it for this, the scores and standings and brackets of the playoffs for this week. But before we do our top 3 plays and pick 'em, we're going to throw it over to the hometown scoreboards desk with Colin Kirkwood.
Thanks, Anthony, and it's time for another edition of Hometown Scores, where you get to take a look into the high schools that we attended back in the day and see what's going on with them. So get ready, because here we go. We touched on Steel Valley and Laurel earlier. Sure, Steve's happy as that win streak continues to roll on. Anthony's team, Lampeter Strasburg, the Pioneers, took a tough loss to Cedar Crest, but they have made the playoffs, and we'll talk about that coming up here. And we flip it over to the next set of scores here. Central Dauphin took a loss as State College came to town and beat them 31-10. And then in the final week of the regular season in West Virginia, Elkins beat Buckhannon Upshur 47-14. Now we take a look at the final edition of the Hometown Standings Board. Steve has officially won the Hometown Standings Trophy for this year with an 8-0 regular season record, 6-0 in conference. Danny Beck clinched the second spot with a 6-4 and 3-3 in conference record. Anthony took home third place, 6-4, 3-4. Dylan holding down the middle with a 3-7, 1-3. Gary Smith and I repping club bottom as always, 2-8 and 0-10. Unfortunately, we do not have a trophy to split between us and club bottom. But here are the upcoming playoff games for the hometown teams. Central Dauphin will serve as the away team against Manheim Township. Steel Valley will once again serve as the away team versus Burgettstown. And Anthony's Lampeter Strasburg Pioneers will serve as the away team, against the Northern Lebanon Vikings, with former Millersburg Indians coach Roy Wall at the helm. But make sure you stay tuned because we've got lots more here as we talk about the top 3 plays as I send it back over to Anthony.
Well, before we do the top 3 plays, Colin, we're going to do the pick'ems now. As you take a look at the standings, Twitter is in sole position of first place. They went 6-0. They are 33-13. I am tied with Danny Beck. I went 6-0 as well, 32-14. Gary in the middle, he went 4-2, 30-16. Steve is now, Jody High Roller is at 500, 23-23.
Watch out. I'm inching my way up.
We're going to take a look at the pick'ems now. Clairton versus Carmichael's, Dylan and the Puppy. Going with Carmichael's, they think that Carmichael's can beat Clairton. It's going to be tough. Definitely possible. That could be an upset there. But Steve, is this going to be, this is not your high roll of the week, I don't think.
No, it's not. My high roll will come later in the time. But you know what, Dylan and the Puppy, those are two guys that I can get ahead of if they pick the wrong picks.
Looking at the next set of games here, Washington versus East Allegheny. Everyone going Washington here. Kind of surprising, East Allegheny, like a Pittsburgh team, but Steve's shaking his head, so we're all going to stay with that. Aliquippa versus Beaver. Everyone thinks Aliquippa is going to defeat Beaver. Continuing on into the next side, Bell Vernon, Thomas Jefferson. This one, I'm thinking Bell Vernon has a chance to win. Dylan Goodday, Bell Vernon superfan, thinks Bell Vernon can win. That's going to be a very close game. I'm very excited to see that one. As we look at the next pick'em here, Gateway McKeesport. Steve's going McKeesport. I'm going with McKeesport. And since I'm going McKeesport,
Can we I didn't mean to pick McKeesport. I'm going Gateway.
Steve's going Gateway.
Yeah,
he
sorry
just changes
about
it
that.
live on air. As I'm picking McKeesport, so everyone else should pick Gateway
Yes,
because
exactly.
when I pick McKeesport, I always lose.
I must have skipped over that one.
So as
Like
we
those guys.
take a look at the 6A side of things now, we will see Pittsburgh Central Catholic versus Penn Hills. Pittsburgh Central Catholic barely defeating their opponent last week, but Steve is going to go Penn Hills, and I believe he's going to go where it's warm.
Take me somewhere where it's warm. I've got to go where it's warm, man, because of these hot takes. Penn Hills over Central Catholic, which I don't usually do this because Central Catholic is a Pittsburgh powerhouse in Whitfield football, but gotta keep the fans watching.
And now you're going to take a look at the top 3 plays. Steve, you're going to start off here with your highlight.
All right, the third play, and it's going to be Jelani Stafford. No, I'm sorry, this is Colin Phillips. I'm so used to calling Jelani Stafford's that 35-yard run at the end of the game.
And then here the number 2 play is from Anthony's highlights, and a blocked punt will actually result in EF landing on it in the end zone and getting a touchdown, a huge touchdown, although they came on the wrong side of it.
And then here the number 1 play here from Beavers, Brody List. Let's take a look at this pass. 32 yards, tipped and caught in the end zone by Zach Hansen. The blue ribbon play is not going to change. Nope. McGuffey right here, just unbelievable run.
It is simply ridiculous. And I'm glad Anthony, when you were making these highlights, came over. You're like, guys, is this going to unseat? I was like, heck no, it's not going to unseat it. Just due to the sheer strength that he
I don't
has.
know. I still think there's a couple Laura Highlands plays that could have
Unseated it.
Yeah, I think so. I'm not trying to be biased, but I just think that there was some that could have knocked it off its realm or knocked it off its throne. But
Mustang hopeful over here.
Well, that's going to do it for the show today. So thank you all for watching. Thank you to Stephen Ruffing and Danny Beck for all they do, as well as being the color analyst, as well as Colin Kirkwood, Dylan Goodday, our hometown scoreboard correspondent, as well as our West Virginia High School Roundup correspondent as well. Thanks to Gary Smith and all the people in the studio. Thank you also to Matt Kiefer, California Vulcan Sports Information Director there. It's Thinker SID Day here across the nation on Twitter. So thank you to him for all he does for everything California sports here. But thank you all for watching. We'll be back next week with more playoff football here in the Whitfield. I'm Anthony D'Agostino. Have a great week, everybody.